manuscript, feedback and reverb about the way story shapes society and how understanding the science of sound can help affect social change. He is currently the writer-in-residence at the Kerouac House in Orlando. Kassi Underwood is a writer, teacher, and spiritual activist who was born in Kentucky. She is the author of a forthcoming memoir about her journey of healing, transformation, and growth after an abortion in college, tracing the spiritual teachers and unexpected new friends who empowered her in surprising ways, out in spring 2017 from HarperCollins. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic Online, Al Jazeera America, the New York Daily News, Refinery 29, The Rumpus, Guernica, Exhale's Pro Voice blog, and elsewhere. She has been a guest on MSNBC's Melissa Harris Perry, featured on Upworthy, and profiled in New York Magazine alongside 25 other women sharing their abortion stories. She holds an MFA in literary nonfiction from Columbia, where she taught for 3 years in the undergraduate writing program. She speaks about abortion, meditation, and spiritual technologies that improve the quality of the mind. Kassi lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where she is currently a student at Harvard Divinity School.
And I'm going to introduce Liza Monroy.
You want to read first?
Liza Monroy is the author of the memoir, The Marriage Act, the risk I took to keep my best friend in America and what it taught us about love, and the debut novel, Mexican High. Her articles and essays have appeared in numerous publications, including the New York Times, the New York Times Magazine, the Los Angeles Times, O, Marie Claire, Jane, XO Jane, Poets and Writers, Self, Psychology Today, and Bust. She has taught writing at Columbia University and now lives in California with her husband, baby, pug, and a pot-bellied pig named Senor Bacon. She teaches creative writing and writing on social justice at UC Santa Cruz and is at work on her next book, Seeing as Your Shoes Are Soon to Be on Fire, a collection of essays.
Thanks, Kassi. So to begin, I've asked the panelists to select a 2-paragraph to 2-page excerpt from their work that demonstrates the writing techniques that we're going to talk about today. Or it can sound a little abstract, like, using humor to bring levity to serious subjects. So what does this look like in practice? So we've each prepared a short section, which I'll start. This is from The Marriage Act, which is about having married my best friend for his green card when we were 22. He's gay and from a Middle Eastern country, so at the time it was the best option to have him, to keep him in the country and with me, which I knew because my mother was a State Department Foreign Service officer who worked to prevent illegal immigration.
Hold the mic.
I got it. So what's happening in the short excerpt I'm going to share is that we are at our INS interview. Gary Kubiak is the name of the pseudonym for the officer who's interviewing us. And he's asking us about our sex life. So the stakes are high, but it was also, in retrospect, quite hilarious. How regularly do you engage in sexual relations? I had been dreading that question. All my bravado melted away. Bravery was gone. I had been reduced to this blubbering mess in an immigration office in downtown Manhattan. We love sex, Amir said. Well phrased, Amir. We did love sex. We just didn't have it with each other. All a matter of semantics. Gary Kubiak looked at me. I cleared my throat. Yes, we are very sexually active. He seemed to consider this. Look, I'm on your side here, he said. I can see your relationship. Years of doing this, I have developed a sixth sense for it. And you're not about a green card. If it were up to me, I would approve your case today. You add up on paper, and I can see you guys are good. I'm sure you won't mind if I ask you a question or two in private. He turned to Amir. Will you come with me for a moment? I looked at Amir, and he looked at me. Both of us quietly panicked and trying to hide it. Why was he separating us? What was going to happen? It was something out of the movie Green Card, and now it was something out of my life. I was alone in the room. Gary Kubiak returned. He sat down at his desk across from me. He looked me in the eye. Tell me, he said, is your husband circumcised? Oh my God, was this legal? Did I have to answer? Was he going to ask Amir to drop his pants? I panicked. In our handful of years of friendship and marriage, Amir and I had never seen each other naked. Another thing we had in common was our modesty. We changed in our rooms. We dressed at least in shorts and t-shirts if we were out in the kitchen area. Neither of us had ever even walked in on each other using the bathroom or in the shower. I had no idea if Amir was circumcised. I'd never seen his penis. Is that a legitimate question, I said. Tell me, he said, and we can move this right along. Why do I have to talk about my husband's private parts with you? How is this not sexual harassment? Can you get a supervisor? I am the supervisor, he said. So, what do I do? Coin toss? Why don't you come visit us at home? Look through our things, see our bedroom, where we sleep, or our office where we work, I squeaked. Are you not answering my question because you do not in fact know if your own husband is circumcised or not? He got up and left the room. I sat there sweating. That's it, I thought. Amir is getting deported. I'm about to be arrested. My mother's going to find out. Life as I know it is over. I tried to prepare myself for the worst, but how does one prepare for being shackled and led away? I looked around for an escape route. There was none. Kubiak was probably putting Amir in handcuffs at that very moment. All over a Russian roulette-style question about a penis.
All right, so political corruption in New Jersey is pretty legendary. This piece was published in 2009. It's self-explanatory. It's called The Future Mayor of Hoboken. With all the political corruption busts in New Jersey recently, I'm thinking of running for mayor of Hoboken. With the campaign now heating up, the timing is right for me to jump into the race. Since I already have 9 felony convictions, from shoplifting to counterfeiting to possession of narcotics, I figure I'm way ahead of your more conventional candidates. My campaign slogan will be, a vote for a convicted felon is a vote for total transparency. I know it sounds crazy, but if you think about it, it makes sense. With the expectation of dishonesty already festering in the voting public, why not run a guy who's been inherently dishonest for most of his life? At least everyone will know from day one exactly what I'm doing. My campaign platform will be a tough on street crime mandate. No sense mucking about with white-collar criminals and or corrupt politicians. There just isn't room in our prisons for such as these. And why mess with the status quo? The trick lies in convincing people that the real problems facing America are caused by street-level drug users, dealers, and prostitutes, and not your average inside trader or banker ripping off taxpayer coffers. I've never known a hedge funder to tag a subway car or urinate in an alley. White-collar crime is, as its name implies, clean crime. Prisons aren't built for the perpetrators of these crimes. Hell, most of them wouldn't survive a month, and there's no money in warehousing dead convicts. That's simple economics. Under this platform, I expect a bevy of campaign contributions from the prison industrial complex as well as Wall Street. I have extensive experience with jurisdictional crime, including the workings of county jails, state corrections departments, and Federal Bureau of Prisons, as well as their respective courts. I spent many years as an insider studying the methods, means, and missions of these institutions. With roughly 30 misdemeanors and felony arrests, one loses count, I know firsthand how and why the law works, and more importantly, how to profit from it. With all this street cred, I can virtually guarantee that no matter what my crimes might be as mayor, I'll not be dumb enough to get caught and embarrass the good people of New Jersey yet again. The last mayor of Hoboken, Peter Camerano, was only in office for 3 weeks when he got pinched for accepting bribes. All in all, there were 44 arrests of New Jersey politicians last July, including a Brooklyn rabbi accused of trafficking in human organs. What a dope. You can't sell a kidney to just any schmuck on the streets, and I can smell a rat from a mile off. I can also promise that any drug use I indulge in as mayor will be strictly on the up and up. With the large inflow of cash, I can find plenty of doctors willing to supply me with all the pharmaceutical opiates and amphetamines I can stomach. I'm an important guy in a highly stressful position, and I might need a little something to take the edge off, right? And if the press gets wind of it, I'll just take a junket to one of them expensive rehabs while they put about that I'm addicted to pain pills or diet pills. And I'll come out 20 days later as pale and chubby and clean as a newborn babe. Folks love redemption stories.
So some context for what I'm about to read. My memoir, This Is Happening, is about my experience in the troubled teen industry. When I was 13, I was kidnapped out of Las Vegas airport, put in a mental institution in St. George, Utah, and then shipped to a behavior modification program in Upolu, Western Samoa. The troubled teen industry is a $1 billion network of privatized prison camps for kids. And so for the cost of an Ivy League education, you too can outsource your child abuse. So this is from deep into the memoir, about 3/4 of the way in. This prison camp was in Samoa in the South Pacific, and hygiene was not good. So things like ringworm and scabies and boils kind of run rampant in the program. And this scene is, I'm gonna go ahead and apologize in advance for what I'm about to read to you. It hurt this morning when I was taking a shit. I thought maybe it was just a really big shit, but afterward, when I got back to the school folly, a folly is like a building, this is a thatched roof hut, and sat down to work on my history folder, it still hurt. Sitting down hurt. Not as bad as shitting, but still pretty bad. Sully, Emafalui le faliese. Leai, you just go. I asked if I could go to the bathroom. They tell me no, because I just went. And I try to explain they're not having it, so I have to wait for lunch. In the bathroom, at lunch, I'm gingerly touching my butthole with one finger. There's a lump, a big one. It feels both hard and soft at the same time. When I'm not touching it, it throbs and itches, but when I itch it or poke it, I light up with pain. It feels like I'm shitting a rock, but a small but incredibly real and painful stone. I wonder if I could have swallowed a rock at any point. I try to pass it, except it won't come out, no matter how hard. I poke it some more, wincing at the pain, but determined to learn what the hell is wrong with my ass. It's not inside my butt, like not in the plumbing, but rather inside the skin of my butthole. And suddenly I realize what's happening. I have a boil on my asshole. The fuck, Samoa? Because there are no mirrors here, I can't see whether or not it's poppable. Can't pop it myself. And I really don't want to ask anyone to look, but I don't have any other way to check this thing out. I explain the situation to Nick and Justin, ask for their help. They don't even hesitate. That's how close we are, how desensitized. Yeah, dude, let's see it. Yeah, bend over, boil butt. Oh, dude, it's huge. Jesus, man, why is it blue? That's more of a purple. Yeah, man, I don't think that's a boil. I wouldn't try to pop that if I were you. Really? What does it look like? Like you've got a blueberry growing out of your ass? A grape. It's not big enough to be a grape. Well, it's bigger than a blueberry, but it's not purple. Yeah, it is, man. Look at it from this light. I'm still bent over, boxers around my ankles, skirt flipped up, spreading my ass cheeks. Okay, guys, what do you really think it could be? Herpes? Herpes? How would I get ass herpes? How do you think? Dude, no. Well, how else do you explain ass herpes? It's not ass herpes. I had a friend who got herpes on his neck and shoulder from wrestling with a dude. No, for real. You could have gotten it from a toilet seat. But are we sure it's herpes? I pull my boxers back up and skirt back down. In Samoa, lavas are traditional, custom. You need to see the nurse, dude. Really? I have to show the nurse my asshole? Yeah, looks like it, unless you want that thing getting worse or spreading. So I'm bent over in the nurse's folly, spreading my ass cheeks, and she bends down and looks, then starts swearing in Samoan and calling in other people. Fathers, the cooks. Let's come in and look. They're all speaking in Samoan, too fast for me to understand, laughing, making that pain sympathy face where you squint your eyes and make your mouth into an O. And then she says in English, tomorrow morning, doctor run, okay? They never respond so quickly to any medical condition. Getting a doctor run into a PIA right away is unheard of. Even the kid with tuberculosis and the centipede bite swollen to the size of a baseball is still walking around the beach. So I'm worried it's something really bad. Should I be worried? Is it serious? She just shrugs. Wait and see doctor. Tomorrow morning, we go. The next morning I go on a doctor run. The doctor takes one cursory glance at my butthole and with no hesitation and every confidence gives me a diagnosis that I thought only applied to women who've had kids and very old men whose butts are falling out. A hemorrhoid is a swollen or inflamed vein in the lower part of the rectum or anus. An external hemorrhoid is when one of these is prolapsed, pushed through the thin wall lining the rectum or anus to protrude outside the anal sphincter. When an external hemorrhoid becomes irritated, it can clot and become hard, become thrombosed. This being the most painful type of hemorrhoid and the one I happen to have. Of course, I had no idea what this thing is. Hemorrhoids are just an old people word that means pain in the ass. Something 14-year-old kids aren't supposed to know about. I know they have to do with the butt, and I know that's why preparation H is funny, but that's about it. But now I'm 14, and I have hemorrhoids. I ask how I got them, and he says, A, from lifting a heavy weight, B, from strenuous exercise, or C, from pushing too hard during bowel movements. Read A, supply runs, where we have to carry 100-pound bags of sugar down a hill, or B, skills, exercise designed as torture, or C, explosive diarrhea. The Paradise Cove rectal trifecta. I hate this place.
JC, I didn't tell you this, but I also have a part in my book about hemorrhoids. I decided not to read it because yours is funnier and more educational. So, my name is Kassi. My book is about my abortion, and this part that I'm about to read to you takes place 3 years after my abortion. And I had this ex-boyfriend, and he called me and told me that he was having a baby with somebody else. And he ended up naming his baby the same name that we had considered when we were thinking about, what he wasn't ever thinking about having a baby, when I was thinking for a hot minute about having a baby. And so then I go into this like kind of despair, but I'm also like a feminist, so I'm like, I'm not supposed to be feeling sad. And I had written my senior thesis about my abortion, and it was very rah-rah. And I'm meanwhile in Texas, and I'm working for an anti-fraud anti-fraud business, and I'm feeling like this like feminist fraud for feeling sad about my abortion. And I'm also having like intrusive thoughts and nightmares and stuff. So here we go. I solicited the services of a therapist named Larry. As a general rule, you don't want your shrink to be named Larry. It's right up there with Chester. Larry had a Caesar haircut, a neat do I imagined he brushed with a slim comb on his desk. He had a mustache too, as I recall, and sat with his legs crossed and his hands folded over his khakis. I clocked in on the couch wearing a pair of high heels and a pencil skirt. The room was cramped with stacks of papers and books. Wooden blinds shut out the Texas sun. The thermometer on his window frame tapped 90 degrees. I guess I should tell you that I had an abortion, I mentioned. Sure, Kassi. That's how we talk. He said. Larry was a chronic name user. Sure was his go-to affirmation. Isn't this information like part of the intake, I asked. Sure, Kassi, he said again. Anything can be part of the intake, Kassi. I dropped the subject. There were so many words and phrases that I forbade myself from saying to protect the reputation of abortion, that I refused to admit that my depression had a thing to do with it. I quoted Hazelden literature. I quoted Freud. I quoted my diary to show Larry how much I knew about myself, how many other things this depression could be about. I encouraged Larry to diagnose me with various mental illnesses. I thought I heard a voice say she left him and suggested schizophrenia. I developed a fear of knives in my kitchen drawer and resorted to the exclusive use of spoons. I suggested obsessive-compulsive disorder. I recognized the grandiosity of my ambitions. When I scratched my goals on a Post-it note, I was mortified to see how far I expected to go, and suggested narcissistic personality disorder. Larry shook his head. No, I was merely a person in my 20s. He refused to diagnose me with a single mental illness other than depression. Anger turned inward, I heard one man say. I heard a lot of people say a lot of things about depression that year. You've got to let depression do its work on you, said an elder who had overcome depression himself. Lean into the pain, proposed another. One afternoon, I sank into Larry's couch and flopped over, placing my head between my legs, with my Texas big blonde hair falling down to the floor. I can't breathe, I said into my legs. I need to cancel. I didn't move. Kassi, why don't you stay? Just lie there on the sofa and focus on your breath. How am I supposed to focus on my breath when I can't breathe? He didn't respond. Please, just tell me what's wrong with me. I choked back tears. I was embarrassed for him to see me cry, for him to know that my thinking was so unbearable that I wanted to be institutionalized or otherwise dead, But I could not tell him that I was thinking about dying because then he might institutionalize me. Nothing made sense. Do you think I'll go to hell? I asked. I wasn't even sure I believed in hell, but I knew I did not want to go there. No, he said, but I did not believe him.
Great. So my first question for you all is, I was thinking about influences and our earliest influences as writers in this kind of form. My specialty has kind of always been the Kafkaesque bureaucracy that I witnessed kind of growing up with my mother as a State Department official. So Kafka, of course, was a huge one for me as the champion of all things. Hilariously and absurdly bureaucratic, as well as female comedians like Sarah Silverman and Amy Schumer and a variety of other writers and thinkers. So I wanted to ask who your biggest influences were as you developed in this form and why.
Well, mine was certainly Joseph Heller and Kurt Vonnegut. And Heller was the first one to make fun of World War II, to basically mock the Greatest Generation. And he got a rash of shit for it. But Catch-22 stood the test of time. And Kurt Vonnegut subtitled his book, Slaughterhouse-Five, The Children's Crusade. And the reason he did so was when he went to visit an old war buddy when he was writing the book, the wife was really mad, and he couldn't figure out why, and he finally just came out and asked her, and I think, and I'm paraphrasing this because it's been a long time since I read the book, she said, "You were just babies then." And he said, "I beg your pardon?" She said, you were just babies in the war, and you're going to write this book, and you're going to make yourself out to be John Wayne, and they're going to make a movie, and it's all going to be a bunch of crap." So, as a deal to her, he subtitled the book The Children's Crusade and created the anti-John Wayne, Billy Pilgrim. Anybody who's ever read the book knows.
I'm going to echo Vonnegut. Vonnegut was huge for me. I would say that the writers, Douglas Adams, I was reading when I was very young, and he was the one that showed me how funny work that was taking on serious subject matters could be, making social criticism. Oscar Wilde and Mark Twain were writers I liked a lot when I was young. As I got older, George Saunders was very important to developing my sense of humor. Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett in Good Omens, where they were honoring Douglas Adams. And then I also have done stand-up, and I love stand-up comedy, and I allow that to inform my work. So people like Bill Hicks, George Carlin, Louis C.K., super important for me.
Yeah, I started reading Irma Bombeck when I was 8. I
Evelyn
love.
Waugh.
What's that?
Evelyn Waugh, sorry.
Oh, Evelyn Waugh.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love Irma Bombeck. And Mary Carr was it? Irma Bombeck doesn't go to like super serious with her work, but Mary Carr does. She writes about mental illness and alcoholism and child abuse, and it's and she writes about it. I mean, I'm not like slapping my knee when I'm reading her work, but I'm feeling like into that humor that she's putting there on the page. Erica Jong. Also, I love Erica Jong, Fear of Flying. She has a new book out called Fear of Dying. And she was a huge influence. She's, again, not somebody who I'm like, slapping my knee about, but she has a humorous self-regard that Mary Carr also has. And as JC was saying, I think comedians are like the great social change agents of our time, and they can take really serious issues and it's issues that we feel really uncomfortable talking about and draw us in. I think Dave Chappelle is like a master at that. Amy Schumer is like has been a master at this for changing like gender equality. I think that she's doing huge work there in a way that people are all getting it. Sarah Silverman was amazing with that, but she I think that some people really don't get what she's doing sometimes. So but Amy Schumer has been, and I love Sarah Silverman, but Amy Schumer has been huge. My only caveat with that is that comedians are going a lot of times. They're going for laughs. Comedians are going for laughs. A memoirist, we have to be careful that we're not just going for laughs with our work. So.
Yeah, that's a great point and leads into the craft element of our discussion too. So I'm wondering if in your work, can you and do you make a deliberate choice to make it funny? Do you have an awareness that you're bringing humor into the work in what's traditionally regarded, I think in all of our cases, as traditionally serious subject matter, or material that seems to not naturally want to present itself in this way? So how does humor factor into your composition process, and where in your drafts does humor make its way in? I know that my own first drafts are seldom funny, or the jokes are bad.
With me, the humor comes out right away. I mean, I definitely made a conscious choice to make it funny. And I think it's because I had the authority to do so. It's the same with Heller and Vonnegut. They were both World War II veterans. Having the authority of both being there and seeing how fucked up it actually was, they had the authority to make that choice and make it funny. And the authority allows you to witness firsthand the inherent absurdity of it all. Have you ever had a boss who was just an idiot? And this guy's just a moron. How did you get this job? You're working circles around this guy, and he's just, whose cousin are you, really? And I mean, it's absurd that this guy is over you, right? That's the authority. And when you have that authority, I think it's easier to be funny and to make that conscious choice to be funny.
So Stephen Elliott once talked to us in a class we attended about how digression is afforded by the conflict or tension that you build up. And in that way, you can earn the privilege to go away from the main narrative and then come back to it, but you have to have enough gas in the tank. So similarly, I think of humor when I'm writing about particularly painful subject matter as a way to kind of give the reader fuel to keep going. It brings levity and it stops things from being overwhelming. So when I'm writing what is basically essentially about really horrific child abuse and torture, things like that, I've found writing it that both for myself as the writer and for the reader down the line, the only way to continue pushing through that was to have something that would give you a little more energy. And it's also a way to sort of sneak in things that people probably wouldn't pay attention to. If I didn't make my book funny, you'd put it down because it would be such a bummer. So I feel like for me, I made a conscious decision to try to lighten it in that way.
So I started writing my book at this weird juncture in my life. I just got into Columbia. It was after the scene I just read. So I finished my stuff. I broke it up with my therapist, Larry, and I moved to New York to pursue this MFA in nonfiction writing. And when I got there, I was still depressed, and I was writing humor essays. In the first essay I brought to class, my professor said, "Funny is money," and I was like, "Oh my god, then I better be really funny." So I went home and tried to write funnier, and it didn't work. So I was trying to be funny, and the next time in class, Liza was in this class. I don't know if you remember. She had my essay out, and she was like, "No, stop!" She was crossing things out and telling me not to try to be funny. That naturally, the work is naturally funny. I don't have to make this effort to write comedy. And so then I saw that people who were really getting taken seriously in the writing program were those who were writing very serious subjects seriously. So I was and at the same time I had learned about these abortion rituals, and I was going to be doing those anyway. And I was like, well, I'm going to write about my abortion, which I had always, I started doing in college, and I'm going to write, I'm going to continue that narrative, and I'm going to write it very seriously, because this is very serious. And I didn't know that George Saunders actually wrote about this experience in his, not my abortion experience, but he wrote about his experience of getting to grad school and deciding that he was going to write serious work in the New Yorker this past week. It was if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's an amazing article that depicts going through the MFA program perfectly. And so I did that, and the first time I realized that I wasn't trying to be funny, but that it was still coming across as funny, even though I was writing about abortion, was when I did, it was my first ever reading series, and I was so nervous that I was having a panic attack walking up to the stage. When I was even giving the reading, I was doing this, just having a total meltdown. And people started laughing though at the work. They were laughing at lines I didn't realize were funny. And that's when, even now, the lines that I expect you all to laugh at, you never laugh at, and the ones that I didn't intend to be funny, you're laughing at. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, I have no idea when I'm being funny, so I just have to write without even, like, I can't, it actually distorts the work when I make this effort. So it's kind of like the paradox. I need to stop trying to be funny in order to be funny.
Yeah, I had like almost a reverse experience while writing my memoir, where I thought the premise lent itself so well to comedy. Like, 20-something girl marries her Middle Eastern gay best friend for his green card while her mother works for the State Department preventing immigration fraud. It was like, I worked in LA for a while as a story analyst and got really into this mind of like, the high premise. It's a high premise comedy, and it should be like a rom-com, and I started calling it's like Will and Grace on steroids, and I kind of went overboard almost with the trying to make it funny on the first go-round. And it wasn't until a Columbia workshop with Kassi, I think you might have been in it actually, with Patty O'Toole, who told me, and she's a very serious presidential biographer, and I went into that workshop thinking, she's just not going to get my book, and she's a very serious person, and this is just, it's a romp, it's a buddy comedy, it's just, she's not going to get it, and her getting it in a different way was actually extremely helpful, in that she told me, hey, there's actually very serious material here, there's a lot of seriousness underlying kind of what you're turning into like a road trip movie, essentially. So I went back and rewrote it, seeking more balance between the series, to bring actually a little bit more seriousness into it and not just make it solely about comedy. And I found it to be kind of about trying to strike a balance and keeping the scenes I loved so much, like my mother almost catching us in a restaurant and I pretend to choke on a scallop to try to save the situation, or that scene in the INS office, or just like I'm very attached to the humor there, so I kind of try to go where the heat is with the humor, and then let other more serious parts come to the forefront. I think Olivia agrees. So my next question to you is also what can such levity do in a work beyond what JC you were talking about, maybe making something that might be difficult to read more palatable for an audience. What else can humor do when you're using it to write about something that would traditionally be considered not funny?
Well, in all good satire, the truth is there. It's knocking on their forehead like some deranged clown, right? And that's really what it's all about, getting down to the truth of the matter. For it's not until the truth comes out that social change actually takes place. And there's a lot of misnomers about the truth. Truth is beauty, and the truth will set you free. But usually the truth is pretty damn ugly. And people really don't want to hear it. So if you can make it funny and that truth comes out, social justice might bend that much more, might bend that much a little bit quicker. That's what levity, I think that's what writing.
I agree. George Saunders says that humor arrives when you're told the truth faster than you expect to hear it. And I think it is a way to, when you try to confront people with truth, if they can tell that you're going to give them something they don't want to hear, they put up their walls. But when you can make a joke like I did about outsourcing child abuse, that's exactly what it is. But I said it too quick for you to have a chance to, block it. And I think that's definitely what humor can do. And I think humor can also, Freud talks about humor as it was a way for us to communicate something about fear. So you're in a hunting party, and you hear a noise in the bushes, and we think it might be a saber-toothed tiger, but then a bunny rabbit pops out, and then we laugh because the threat is no longer a threat. I think that sometimes the humor can give our readers permission to accept that what is horrific or a threat is also something that the writer is laughing at, so you're allowed to laugh too. And if you don't, there's a Vonnegut book where we were talking about this earlier, I can't remember which one it is, but all these terrible things keep happening, and the guy just keeps going, I had to laugh like hell.
Yeah.
Had to laugh like hell.
Yeah.
And if you don't laugh, then it's just tragedy.
Yeah, well, there's some satire too that you really won't laugh at. I mean, one of the most famous satirical pieces, A Modest Proposal, is not really that funny and if you haven't read it, it was written by Jonathan Swift, and it was during the Irish famine. And his idea was for the English to eat the surviving babies of the dead Irish people. And this way you're killing two birds with one stone.
So when we laugh together, like friendship is born, and I think that when you create when you produce laughter in another human being through your writing, you're creating like a relationship on the page, people will pay. It creates community. People pay to go see. They literally go pay to laugh. Like I can't tell you how many times in New York City I would want to go, and that's what I wanted to do on the weekends. I just wanted to go to the Comedy Cellar in New York, and just laugh. You get that feeling of togetherness, and I think that that's what I want to do, at least with my work, especially around abortion, where it can be a divisive subject. I want to bring people together, and it diffuses the tension. It's surprising when you're talking about a subject that's very serious to bring in humor. It's surprising, and I'm not gonna sit there and spend my time reading something if I'm not getting surprised quite a bit. And I think it's already been echoed, or I'm gonna echo what's already been said, that humor is such a strong rhetorical device to make a point. Dave Chappelle is so good at that. I mean, his routine about riding in the car and getting high with his white friend who is talking, socializing with the police officer. That is he makes his point very well. Everybody understands that and they're laughing, but it's also you think about it and you walk away with a strong impression. So I think that it's just a really effective rhetorical device.
And then one challenge for me is always trying to convey this idea in terms of practical techniques. And I know, JC, you've taught humor writing classes, and I might have something especially to say for this question, but something that I always search for to teach students of mine who want to learn about humor writing is what practical techniques can we offer to kind of get, do you have to be naturally funny? Do you have to be a funny person? I consider you all funny people. Is there a way to teach funny in when it comes to our writing?
Sure.
You want to start?
Or
you can, any order.
You can go.
I think it could probably be teach. I mean, they teach creative writing, and I don't believe in that it can't be taught. I think people with less talent just have to work harder, that's all. And I think the same would go for humor. Why not? We learn everything else. Those less talented, again, need to work harder. That's the technique. Use your authority whatever you can. And if you don't have any authority, go out and get you some.
So one of the things I would teach is that Aristotle, Kassi just said surprise. Aristotle taught humor arises from surprise. It can also arise from juxtaposition, misdirection, malapropism. So there are academic techniques, craft you can study, but it has to be a human thing. So a joke. I talk in my stand-up about my family a lot. My mother was very conservative, Catholic, and she married a Jewish man. And I personally could not take all the guilt. So I decided I became, what's someone that starts with an A? And I'm an alcoholic. And it's just, you set up one expectation and then you subvert it. So I led you to an answer in your mind by introducing the subject of religion. And when I said what's the one that begins with an A, you automatically go to atheist or agnostic because that's the path you believe you're being led down. And then I intentionally subvert that expectation, leading to surprise. And that surprise is where our humor arrives from. But also, I'm telling you the truth faster than you expected to hear it, which is that conservative upbringings where we're given a lot of guilt and shame can lead to addiction. And that's hilarious.
That is so good. Okay, so yeah, I mean, my experience with writing in general has been really not to try to use craft. So I went to this MFA and I spent 3 years all about craft, craft my whole work. And now I'm trying to have to undo everything that I learned because it has completely ruined my writing. And that's not, the MFA rocks. I wouldn't know any of these folks without the MFA. And that's it's about friendship. I met my husband there, it was great. But for me, attempting to write humor is actually not that useful. And I've seen even in people whose writers whose work I'm reading and commenting on, if they're writing down and keeping in the text every funny line that they think of, that's usually not the way. I mean, I think that a real technique is knowing when not to use humor. Because when we're going into a scene and you're taking somebody into a place where you want them to feel a certain emotion, the emotion that you were feeling, a lot of times I wasn't really feeling this is so funny that I'm at this Catholic retreat for healing after abortion and they're having me do this really weird thing and shaming me, that wasn't funny at the time, it was horrifying. And so to use humor in that moment was not, or when I was finding out I was pregnant, there was nothing funny about that in the moment. So I want to take somebody into that scene with me and allow them to go into that kind of darkness that I had to go into. But then afterward, you can lead them to some other place with humor. And I think that there's this way that using humor, especially if we start thinking when I say we, I mean I. When I start thinking I want them to laugh so hard, ha ha, all the time, so that they don't have to deal with these emotions. I don't want to put my reader through this. But people are often coming to work to read about stuff that people aren't talking about. So again, knowing when to cut it off, and when I'm going for humor every time, there's usually something. If I'm being flippant, if I'm just really going for laughs, sometimes it's the case that I'm trying to avoid going to a deeper truth. So again, just knowing when to stop, and also sometimes for some writers, going for laughs really doesn't. It's not going to produce the laughs. It's not going for laughs that produces the laughs.
I would also love to mention just irony is one of the quickest ways to arrive at humor. I'm not actually sure what irony means, though. So you should look that up.
I think he's being ironic.
Yeah, somehow the funniest stuff seems to pop up spontaneously. I think going back to what Kassi said, that's a great point about when you're trying to write funny and trying to go for laughs, that's almost when it's least likely to happen. I had a creative writing student the other day who saying, "Professor, I can't give my presentation. I have 2 giant hickeys on my neck." And I was like, "Well, just put on a turtleneck." And he said, "I can't put on a turtleneck. It makes me look like Henry Rollins in an LL Bean catalog." So, the juxtaposition thing of and that just happened spontaneously that you just said that. So I was like, "Oh, go put that in something. Go use that in a piece, and you can be excused from your presentation." But so yeah, that kind of funny spontaneity, and I think developing a healthy sense of the absurd is something that's helped me a lot. And I had a similar issue with the MFA program. I was so focused on craft, and I was working so hard at being conscious of all the choices that I could possibly make that I almost was paralyzed and I couldn't make any choices. In that sense, I think it takes a couple years, post-MFA hangover goes away, and then it's freedom, the fresh air of being able to kind of do whatever, and hopefully having internalized the craft knowledge. And I started training capoeira, the Brazilian martial art, which makes me feel ridiculous because it's very acrobatic and very martial art. So it's kind of you're just really looking silly in a white outfit, dancing and trying to do flips, and it's just something that's this is ridiculous that I'm trying to do acrobatics or something, and it kind of gets me out of my head and into my body a little bit more. And I found that's it's an odd, non-writing related at all thing that really helps me maintain that kind of sense that I try to bring to my work. So I would say find something too that you love that's not writing, that brings out the sense of humor in other ways. What about situations where it's inappropriate, or are there situations that it's inappropriate to use humor at all? And one example that came to mind thinking about this question was Catherine Harrison's The Kiss. Could that have had a moment of reprieve? Is there room for humor in any type of work? Or are there some subjects that are off limits or should be off limits. Is there a line, or do you think there should be, or what is it?
Do you want to say what the kiss was about?
Oh yeah, the kiss was about having a sexual relationship with her father. It's not funny. There's not even a moment that's funny. I think that book works very well. But so do you think there are some topics that are like incest, for example, or other topics that are off limits or just don't even bother trying?
Well, I don't think there's anything that's really off limits. I mean, lines are made to be crossed. If you draw a line, somebody's going to cross it, right? And on that score, many mistakenly conflate free speech with bad taste. So if somebody says something offensive and gets called on it, they say, oh, you're messing with my free speech. No, I'm just using my free speech to say that you're an asshole for saying it, right? And so, and again, I think it goes back to authority, and I hate to keep beating on this, but Joan Rivers regularly made fun of the Holocaust. And Sarah Silverman and Amy Schumer have followed in her wake. You guys all mentioned comedians as your muses, as somebody who inspired you. But they were Jewish, so they have a little authority. I could never get away with making fun of the Holocaust, nor would I want to. I'm not compelled to, right? There's nothing in my background that would induce me to make fun of the Holocaust. So I think it's very subjective, and it has to do with each writer's experience. And the other thing is, they're comedians, so they're held to lower standards than writers, at least in my opinion. So I can't speak for Catherine Harrison because I lack the authority. But I once wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about the murder of my brother, and I could never turn that into humor. And so I think, I think on an individual level, even Joan Rivers had something that she wouldn't make fun of.
It is a super difficult question, and I'm going to go ahead and be the bad guy and tell you a story about when I made a young girl cry in a writing workshop because we read a Dora Welty story, and there were some jokes in there. She was writing about racism very seriously, and the jokes were at the expense of the racist, but she didn't. The woman in the workshop didn't appreciate the humor, and she insisted that there are some things we cannot joke about, and I adamantly disagreed as a